everyone, welcome to episode 3 of the Jenn Sheelen podcast. Today is Tuesday, April 5th of 2016. If you are a newbie, a new listener, welcome, and if you're a regular, welcome back. You can find me on social media sites. Let me look at my list. I just signed up to a bunch of new things. I am on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Pinterest, and of course, Ravelry. I also have a Ravelry group going for the podcast, and come check it out. We chit-chat about fun knitting things, and you can hear things about the podcast or go chat about it as well. You'll find giveaway information in there as well as announcements and whatnot, and if I'm looking for test knitters, you can look that up in the group, and that's where I announce it, so keep an eye out. It's so funny, I was getting ready to film this podcast, and I'm like, alright, do I sit on the floor again? Do I sit in a chair? You know, sitting on the floor, I'm worried about my background being a little bare. Get it? Little bare. I'll stop. Sorry. I thought of it and I thought that was hilarious. I'm a sucker for a good pun. Anyway, I was setting up for the podcast and I decided to set up on the floor again. I mean, it worked well last time, and then I was able to have my co-host Doug the dog come on in, so he may do that again. And it just seemed, like a good setup. And I think I've started a new routine where while I'm prepping for setting up my own podcast and filming, I listen to other podcasts. So today I listened to Kino Knits, and that's Mary from Kino Knits. She's Kino on Ravelry. You should totally check out her podcast. It's really unique. One, she has a great voice for podcasting. And two, she does this segment called Knitting on Safari, which is super cool. She lives in Kenya. She's an American living in Kenya. And she gets to travel to all these fun different places. It's so cool to listen to where she's been. And the other day, she was petting baby elephants. She was petting baby elephants. I'm kind of a sucker for a good pun and for baby animals too. So that was really cool to see. Another time she talked about hanging out with the giraffes too, which I thought was awesome. So definitely check her out. She has a Ravelry group as well. Alright, I'm going to get right into it to Spinnin' Right Round. Still looking for my spinning mojo. I think I figured it out. I just haven't had a lot of time. I mean, my day is pretty packed. So I'm like, alright, when can I squeeze this in where it's going to be relaxing and not something I have to do? So what I did too is I'm a little worried. I have this fiber lined up to spin, but I have a plan for it. And because I haven't spun in a while, I'm a little worried that I need something to get me back into it, get me back into the spin of things. I'm sorry, it's one of those days. So if you're listening, that might happen a little bit. Anyway, so I dove into my fiber stash and I said, what can I work on that can it doesn't have to have a plan. It's just something that I can spin and just have some fun with, not worry about it, and it'll get me back into it. So behind me here on my spinning chair, which I will talk about in my next episode, I have some Rolegs from Bakewell Hearts, and I discovered her on Instagram. And this, I believe, is called Rainforest, is the colorway, and it has sparkles. I'm also a sucker for sparkles. So, check that out. Isn't that a pretty colorway? And with the sparkles in there, I can't wait to spin those up. So I think that'll be a good way to kind of get me back into it and get me back into spinning again. And check out Bakewell Hearts. She is on Instagram as well as she has an Etsy store as well. So I'll link to that in my show notes on my website. Oh, another thing I'm working on that it kind of goes into what I'm working on now as well as Spinnin' Right Round. So I'll just kind of segue into that. I pulled out, this poor blanket has been parked for a while. And this is my hand spun blanket. Wait till you see. Wait till you see. Isn't that so pretty? It's going to keep going. It's going to keep going. It keeps going. I can't see what's going on, but I think you can. It's still going. Check that out. So, there's a story behind this blanket. When I learned to spin, I started spinning on all natural undyed fibers. And I believe the first that I started spinning with was the gray, and it was a Shetland. And that was from Iron Horse in Natick, Massachusetts. I started, with fibers from there. She's got a lot of great choices, and some of it comes from her own sheep, too. So I started spinning, and I'm like, all right, how do I kind of check in with how I'm doing? A great way to do that is to knit with your hand spun. Knit with it. That's a great way to say, hey, am I overplying? Am I underplying? Is it splitty? Do I like the weight of it? Maybe can I spin a little thicker, a little thinner? It's a way to check in on your spinning. Now, do you have to start a blanket? No. I was just spinning kind of a lot, and it was adding up really quick, and I was like, I really want to cast on this blanket. And of course, that was the one pattern I didn't write down in my notes, but it's a Bernat baby blanket, and I just kind of cast on more stitches and kind of eyeballed it, which is so unlike my type A knitter self. I usually have to know how many stitches and what weight the yarn has to be and blah, blah, blah. Did not do that with this blanket, or it's really a throw. I just kind of cast them on and said, that looks good. Let's go with it. So I cast on and I started going, and of course the weights of all this yarn is not the same. It's a little all over the place, but it's a size 8 needle. It kind of works for, all this different, the little bit of variations and whatnot. And it's a great way to say, hey, all right, I think I overplied this a little bit, or hey, I really like this a lot. It's just a way to check in on your spinning. So I highly recommend it. Doesn't have to be this ginormous undertaking, but the blanket was a good idea for me because I just kind of add to it as I feel like it. And I didn't even do natural fiber on this one. I added a little bit of blue for fun, because why not? And then the part I'm working on now, of course, I don't know if it's going to show up, has sparkles. It really does. It doesn't show. That's a bummer. But it's another natural fiber with a little bit of sparkle thrown in. Totally love it. And it adds a little shine to my little blanket. So yeah, I recommend that. So if you, let me know. Let me know what you do with your hand spun, and check into the group when I post this episode in the Ravelry group, and let me know. When you first started spinning, how do you check in on your spinning? Inquiring minds want to know. So now that I kind of segued into what I'm working on now, I'm not really working on a whole lot. I've really been in a design mode, so when I do have time, I've really been trying to focus on those. This blanket was a great thing to pull out because it's been cold all of a sudden. It was 70 the other day, now it's like 29. Go home, Mother Nature, you're drunk. So the blanket was the perfect thing to work on and kind of stay toasty and warm and have my little cup of coffee and work on my hand spun, and it was a great thing to talk about here, so why not? What else I'm working on is I will check in on my sock blanket. I talked about that in a video I don't know if I talked about it, I think in my first episode. I'm doing pretty good on this one, my sanity project as I call it. It's getting there. It's getting, it's a nice big old square going on there. Really fun. So I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, that's kind of really what I've been focused on, is just designing and the hand spun blanket and my sock yarn blanket when I'm exhausted at the end of the day and I'm like, bleh, and I just need a little sanity knitting. I focus on those. I did purchase some yarn the other day. I'm supposed to be working on a stash. Shh, don't tell. I found this. We have a local yarn shop here in Hingham, Mass, and it's called Yarns in the Square. I happened to go there the other day, and I found some more local yarn. I love local yarn. I'm all about it. And not only does she have Dirty Water Dye Works, but it's a new one that I hadn't heard of. Apparently they've been around a while and I just didn't know about them. They are done Roving Yarns, and this is their Frolicking Feet. Their sock yarn, which I thought was super fun. And you see this colorway? There is somebody out there, Colleen, that I think will like this colorway. She can make a request for either a pair of socks or perhaps one of my designs. I don't know. So, Colleen, or anybody who might like this particular yarn, message in the group and let me know what you think or what you'd like. What can this yarn be? And that could be in my What I'm Working On Now segment. I need a little something going on there. I need a little oomph. All right, we're going to get right into Beverage of Choice, my favorite part. I am drinking, it's a stout, it's so yummy, called Blackout Stout from Great Lakes Brewing. And this is a great stout. It's also really strong. I think it's 9%. Yeah, it's 9%. Shh. Don't tell about that either. So, cheers! Oh my goodness. That is so yummy. I should have let that set a little bit longer too. You don't want it icy cold right out of the fridge. A good stout or a porter, you kind of want to let it set a little bit and not necessarily be room temperature, but just slightly chilled. Totally sounding like a beer snob now, but my hubby would be proud. I'm giving my beer knowledge. And speaking of beer knowledge, the hubby and I went to a beer fest on Sunday, just the other day, and it was fun. It was kind of small, but we had a couple of our favorite breweries there. We had 2 Roads Brewing, which we love, and we had Down the Road Brewing as well. Both of them are local to New England, so we got to visit them a couple times. And I discovered a new beverage that I really liked, and it's called Spiked Seltzer. And what I kind of like about it is I think it'll be a great drink for the summer, when IPAs or all that get a little too heavy. This is light. It's a low carb, it's a low calorie, which all the women out there are going, yay! And it's 6% for the alcohol content too, which really surprised me. So you can kind of mix stuff with it too, but it's a nice, light, airy beverage to try to check out. So I was kind of happy with that. It was a fun little beverage to try. So check them out. That's Spiked Seltzer, and I think they are out of Connecticut. They are, according to my notes. Which I didn't type this time. I wasn't a giant goober. I actually wrote them. On to selfish knitting. Again, with trying to get some knitting in, I've really been it's kind of sparse, but I talked about my hand-spun sweater in my last episode, and how that kind of went womp womp, where I had the pattern picked out, $5 in Paris, and that's not going to work. So I think I've discovered the next pattern that I'm going to knit with it. So this is the swatch, just as a little refresh right there. Love it. Oh, it's BFL, and oh my goodness, this is going to be such a warm, cushy sweater once I figure out the pattern. And what I think I'm going to knit with it is, it's called a Fiona Pullover. And let's see, I think I wrote her down. By Pam Allen. And I knit this out of Quince Company Puffin. So it's a single ply, so it likes to pill a bit, but I wear this sweater all of the time. I love this sweater. Check that out. It kind of rolls a little bit at the bottom. It's a real simple, easy, kind of an instant gratification sweater. It did not take me long to knit this thing. I think I maybe knit it in a few days. I was on fire. I was determined to wear this sweater within days. So because it's my favorite one, and I wear it so much, I wear it more than any of my other sweaters, I'm like, you know what, this might be the perfect design for my hand-spun one. I'll get instant gratification. I'll be able to wear it right away. It's kind of the style that I like. I know I like the pattern a lot. Why not? And I think I will have leftover yarn to maybe make another one. I don't know. That might be a little tricksy right there. It's going to be borderline, but guess what happened when I measured out my yardage for my hand spun? At the time, I don't know if you've seen a few videos back when I talked about my nitty knotty. My nitty knotty measures in meters, not yards. So I said, let's see, I thought I only had 1,084 yards. That was actually meters. So I have 1,186 yards. Oh my goodness. So I'm pretty excited about that. Any little extra yardage makes a huge difference. I mean, at least to me. I don't know about you knitters, but it does to me. And I kind of made a little boo-boo, and hopefully you guys can learn from this. When I spun out all this yarn, the BFL, all of that for the sweater, all I did was list them out and put how many yards, but I didn't write how many yards each individual skein was. So I'm like, uh-oh, how am I gonna know? How am I gonna know how much yardage I used for the sweater and how much I'm gonna have left over without having to go remeasure it all over again? Learn from that. When you have multiple skeins of yarn, more than 2, where you can kind of see a little bit of a difference, mark each skein with how many yards you spun up. It'll save you some trouble, especially if you're knitting, you're spinning enough for a sweater's worth. I learned my lesson. Good news is each of them was around 100 to 120 meters. So I know they're pretty close. I mean, some are way more, a little bit more, like 150, but at least I know the ballpark for each one. But I still, lesson learned. Oops. Oh, my goodness, the things we do, the little mistakes we make, even if after you've been knitting or spinning for some time, you still make some little mistakes that kind of bite you later on. Okay, I'm going to segue into what I'm styling. Goodness, I'm still doing it. Look at this. Oi, ignore that. All right, what I'm styling today is, this is the Tan House Brook shawl from Jenn Lassonde of the Down Cellar Studio podcast. I love this shawl pattern. I'm going to take it off, let's see, so you can see a little closer. The yarn is really funky and busy, but I love it. And I've been told it reminds people of Christmas or chili peppers. Those were two. I love it. But you can kind of see there's some textured, never mind, stitches, some stitches with a little something going on at the bottom. And it was a really fun, easy, top-down triangular shawl, which I love. I'm a sucker for that. And it starts with a garter tab, which cracks me up because some people are like, garter tab, gasp! I can't do that. They're not that bad. It didn't take me too long to pick up the garter tab and figure it out and what was going on with that. So if you're intimidated by a garter tab, don't be. And that actually just gave me an idea for maybe something I can talk about in a future podcast, is how to do a garter tab and not to be afraid of it. Why not? So Jenn Lassonde has the Down Cellar Studio podcast. You should totally check it out. She's a fun listen, and I actually met her, or know her, through our local knitting group. So definitely check it out. And she has great content, and she does a lot of giveaways and fun things like that. And speaking of, you might want to tune in to her podcast because there's a little giveaway that might be coming soon that you might like. Just saying. I don't know what that could be. Okay, so now I'm checking out my notes because I wanted to talk about the yarn here that I used. This is Bohemia Fibers. I love her. Amy from Bohemia does some awesome yarn. And one of the things I love that she does is, actually there's two. One is if you send her a picture of your pets, she'll dye yarn to match the color of your pets. So they're great for like memory yarn for pets that you've lost, is you can knit something to remember them by. And I've actually done that for two of our dogs that have since passed away. And for Doug the dog, of course, I have yarn to match him. And for our little Ret Terrier, very old man, I have some yarn for him as well. He was originally just my husband's dog, and I knit him a pair of socks. He has Parker socks from Bohemia, so thank you, Amy. This, and the other thing that she does is she dyes yarn for, she'll do like a club for different shows. So this was from the True Blood series that was on HBO. And if you were a True Blood fan, oh my goodness, I miss that show. This one was called Little Red Riding Hood from the character Jessica from the show. And it is such a funky, fun colors. And if you look at the picture side by side with the yarn, man, did she hit it spot on. And I see that with all the different yarn I buy from her. I'm a Walking Dead fan too, so I have some Daryl yarn and some Glenn yarn too that I can't wait to knit with. And it's really fun. I mean, it's a really interesting, fun idea. So definitely check her out. She's got a website, so it's Bohemia Fibers, and I will link to her webpage on the show notes. So that is what I am styling. All right, so next, what else I'm styling, can't forget these, is through a friend of mine. I am wearing what are guitar string earrings. And I'll show you up close here. And this is just from Cheap Date Jewelry. And these are made out of guitar strings. How clever is that? I love these earrings. They're so great to just kind of pop on and wear with anything. You can go casual with them. You can kind of dress them up. A lot of fun. She has an Etsy store, so it's Cheap Date Jewelry. There you go. So definitely check her out. She has a lot of other fun kind of jewelry too. It's not just guitar string, but she's got a cool style, so check her out. Okay, I am going to segue into, oh boy, this is the part I'm a little nervous about, so bear with me. Tips and tricks, okay? I have to thank Michelle, my friend Michelle, also from our knitting group. She's M-Shell on Ravelry for this idea. I can't claim this idea at all. This was totally on her, but an awesome idea. We happened to be talking, and she's like, oh my god, you should do that on your podcast. And I'm like, oh my god, you're a genius. Alright, so I love to knit Afterthought heel socks, and the pattern is from LaLa Knits on Ravelry, and her name is Laura Linneman, and she's actually one of the Knit Girls she does the Knit Girll's podcast, so I do have to do some catching up on her podcast. I have it in my queue to check out, but that is where the pattern is from, the Afterthought heel socks. This is my first pair, and it was out of my own hand spun. Give myself a little. This, like so. And check these out. I don't know if I could show them side by side. They're opposite, which I also love. How does my type A knitter love that? I don't know why, but I do. And the fiber was from Port Fiber. Love her stuff. And this was merino and cashmere and nylon. Oh, what a pleasure to spin that. And it came out like sport weight. They were a little bit thicker, but I just was able to easily modify how many stitches to cast on and kind of went with it. And did the Afterthought heel. The reason I'm talking about this is the Afterthought heel. What you do is you put your heel on some waste yarn and you just kind of keep knitting a tube, and then you go back and pluck out your waste yarn and knit the heel. Well, my neurotic knitter self can't seem to do it the way that the videos show me how to do it. I'm a little worried. The videos say pick up the little bars above and below the waste yarn or somehow with it like that, and I'm like, but wait, what if I pick up the wrong bar? What if I don't do it right? I'm gonna pluck it out and it's gonna go pink, 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 pink. That's scary. So I know I do this the hard way. You do not have to do it this way. You can totally follow the video, which I will link to in my show notes. But if you are a neurotic knitter like I am, this is how I do it. So let's give it a go. I also, an idea from Michelle, she's like, why don't you knit a swatch? Because it's kind of hard to see it on socks. I'm like, oh my god. And then I'll be a lot faster to knit up so that I could talk about it in this episode instead of 15 episodes from now when I actually have time to knit socks. So I knit up this little swatch, like so. And you see this little red right here is the quote-unquote waste yarn. And they kind of tell you to pick up the bars kind of right around here. And it's fine. I can't do it. I'm not ashamed. It's okay. It's okay that I can't do it. So what I do is I actually take a darning needle, and you can kind of see in the back the ends of this yarn, and I'd love to know if other knitters do the same thing as I do. These wind up on the inside of my sock. Do you leave them out, or do you put them on the inside of your sock? Doesn't matter. Well, I don't think it does, but... So what I kind of do is, and I should probably get a little closer to the camera here, is, oh my goodness, I'm beet red this time. Ooh, excuse me. I swear I'm not nervous anymore. I'm having a blast, but apparently I still turn a little red from the lights. I'll blame the lights that I have set up. Anyway, back to topic. So what I kind of do is I take my little handy darning needle here, and I kind of just pull out that little end, just to get the end of that yarn back in the front. Very slowly, very slowly. And then I say, all right, see how it's kind of, the end of that yarn is right in there? Just kind of slowly pull that out. And then I have my live stitch. Ta-da! Usually what I'll do is I will have my needles, and I'll be doing this, where I have one needle here, pink, 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 one needle here, one needle here. Probably not a good example for trying to do this on camera. So hence the swatch. And I'll just kind of pick them out so you can kind of see the live stitches. So I take my darning needle, and I just kind of go, all right, there's my live stitch. Oop, there's my live stitch. That's a really good one. Boom, right there. So you're going to have stitches above and below. So you'll split them in half. You should have the same amount that you would normally have for a heel. Put them on whatever needles you use. I tend to use the magic loop method, whatever works for you. And boom, you have your live stitches again. Oh, look, there's another one. Check it out. I'll pull out a couple more. And since I'm not worried about my stitches going pink, 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 I can just kind of do that willy-nilly and show you what's happening. Pull out a couple more here. So see, there's your live stitches right there, above and below. So if you are a neurotic knitter like me, this is another, I know it's harder way to do this, but I figured why not spread what I do and help anybody who's like, nope, not doing the Afterthought, nope, nope, can't do it, nope, nope. There is a way to do it. It is harder, but here you go. It's another option. It's okay, knitters. Don't be ashamed if you tend to do things the hard way like I do. I just, for some reason, I know I could do it if I really tried. I could probably even just do it on this swatch. But I'm like, no, You know, I like my little way. I'm a neurotic knitter. It's okay to be that way. I'm all right with it. So I'm just going to stick with it. Stick with what works. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. One of my favorite sayings. Totally. And Michelle. Okay. Excuse me while I take a little sip. Oh, yummy. Michelle, this is for you. How much for the Cheetos and water? I just humiliated myself as a thank you to you. Everybody, that is actually a clip from a movie that we happened to be talking about the other day. And I will post the YouTube clip on my show notes. It is so funny. If you are a fan of Joe Manganiello, which I looked up how to say his last name, it does not look like that spelled out, but I Googled it. It's Joe Manganiello, and he was actually in True Blood 2 as Alcide, the werewolf. Oh, maybe that's why I'm all red and flushed. I knew I was going to be talking about this. He was in it. Don't groan too hard, trust me. The clip is from the movie Magic Mike 2, and it is hilarious. It's mildly inappropriate, but not that bad, and it's totally worth the watch. And my other fan crush, Channing Tatum, is in the movie as well, so of course I watched it. But definitely check it out. It's hilarious, and that's where my little silly clip was from Magic Mike 2 and Joe. Huge fan, just saying. Okay, I'll stop. Back to knitting, Jen. Back to knitting. All right. Sorry about that. Went on a little tangent. To finish, what is up with my patterns? And I actually decided to throw this in to the end of the podcast to kind of update anybody. If you see me post a picture of one of my patterns and you really liked it and you kind of want to know what's going on, you can either check it out, in my Ravelry group to see if I'm looking for test knitters or if it's been released, or even in my store or my website. Or just kind of an update, like, hey, where does it stand? Is it almost done? Is it ready? Why not? So, why not add a What's Up With My Pattern segment? I talked about the Americana jar cover pattern in my last podcast, and it is finally released. It is in my Ravelry store. It is on my website. $3 pattern, ready to go. So to Amanda the Yarn Enabler, who kind of pushed me in that direction to hurry up and get that launched, it is done. The pattern is up and ready to go. So definitely check that one out. That'll be a fun one now that we're kind of into April, even though it's snowing here near Boston. It's kind of something if you're thinking like Memorial Day, or like for me, I'm thinking 4th of July. We have a big 4th of July party. I'm like, those would be so fun to use as silverware cozies, and you put your little silverware in the jar, or a cup cozy for a beverage of choice. Or, I pictured it when it gets gets to like twilight and it gets dark, is having a bunch of them set up out in our yard with a bunch of tea lights in them. I thought that could be such a cool touch for a 4th of July party. So I have to somehow get knitting on that in between in my spare time to set them up for the party. I think that would be great, and that'll be a lot of fun. My other pattern that is it's actually in test mode now, I have it out with a couple of test knitters, is Dream Whisperer. And I discovered a little something. I was like, cool, I have my knit and I can use them for the photos. Nope. This is another lesson I should have learned, is I should have compared my two yarns side by side. When I knit this, I assumed, which you should not do in knitting, ever, I assumed that this was the same color. It's natural, right? It'll be fine. I don't know if this is going to show on camera. It probably won't. Oh, yes, it will. Do you see how the one on the right is a little bit darker? Yeah. That ain't going to work for pattern photos. Bummer. So I have to knit another one, which is fine because I love knitting it. But I thought, cool, that one's all done. Boom, I can work on the next pattern. Nope. Which is quite all right. The other pattern I'm working on that I talked about in my last episode too was Pixie Petals, which is so pretty. I love this pattern, but it does not love me back. The small jar, boom, done. The large jar, not so much. Started knitting it and it was ginormous. So I had to start all over. So I think what's going to happen with that pattern is for the small jar, you have to use a size 2 needle, or depending on your gauge. And the big jar, a 1.5, which is what I tend to use for all my patterns, but I've had to tweak these to kind of make them work, and the needle size seemed to do it for me. So I'm going to test that one out. I actually have the pattern with my editor now to see if she likes how I wrote it out with Seagrin. Thank you. And we'll see. I'm hoping that the larger jar will work out. I don't know where it's going to cut off, but since this pattern has been so stubborn, I have a feeling it'll cut off in an odd spot, and I'll have to do a little more tweaking, but it'll be worth it. It's such a pretty, pretty pattern, and I just love the name, and it makes me think of little fairies dancing from petal to petal, and it's all just so sweet. So I don't think it's very sweet at the moment because it's not behaving, but I'll keep smiling and maybe it'll work. Maybe? I don't know. So to finish, I have an idea for another podcast or two. Actually, it'll take a couple, I think. I wanted to see if anybody was interested in a toy demo. And what I mean by that is, I've actually been asked more than a few times, somebody will knit up the pieces for a toy, but struggle with putting it together, and especially the face. The face is tricky. Believe it or not, I think for me, that's the hardest part of knitting a stuffed toy, is the face and what to do with it. And I think, where did I put my little bear? Oh, there he is. See? But no, it gives them their character. It's, and it's just really a little intimidating. I have some tricks for that. Some tips and tricks, which I'd be willing to share on here, but I'm kind of curious to see how many people would be interested. And what I would do is I would assign a pattern for everybody to knit, and in an episode or two later, depending on how much time everybody thinks they need, show you how to build the toy and take away that little bit of intimidation, and so you'll finally be able to knit a toy and be like, oh, that wasn't so bad. Huh. So I'd love to share that with you guys. Again, if you're interested, when I post this episode in my show notes and in my Ravelry group, come in and let me know if you are interested in learning how to put together a knit stuffed toy. I'd love to share with you. Oh, the last part. So I love surprises. I love surprises so much. And I can't talk about this one yet, and I'm about to explode. But hopefully I'll be able to talk about it in the next episode. Stay tuned. It's not anything about my patterns. It has nothing to do with me. But oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I love to do surprises, and this is a good one. It's a big one too. It's going to be so good. So stay tuned for the next episode, and I hope you guys join me. Thank you. Bye, guys.